Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I want to discuss the official trailer that came out for Daredevil Born Again. If you haven't seen the trailer already, I'll include a link to it in the description. But I really like the feel and vibe of obviously the darkness and brutality. Obviously the show got reworked to fit more in line with it being kind of a continuation and similar tone as the Netflix series, and we see that. It's interesting, we see that Matt has kind of been in retirement when it comes to the whole Daredevil situation, and he's talking to Kingpin about, well, why is that? He's like, a line was crossed. And so I'm wondering, is it like he ended up killing someone as Daredevil, or maybe he killed the wrong person? Like, you know, and Matt has a very strict code, you know, and a lot of that is that Catholic guilt as well to it playing on to, but he's like, there's that line he will never cross, and he's avoided crossing that line multiple times throughout his, you know, his outings as Daredevil. So I'm really curious to find out, are we gonna find out that maybe it's something that happened during the blip? Because I've heard stuff that says like maybe that was how the show originally was when it was originally being constructed, was going to be like some of this might take place during the blip. Maybe this still does. Maybe this has to do with how, like, maybe he had a similar situation to Hawkeye where Hawkeye went dark and went down the Ronin route during the blip. Maybe Matt had a similar case. I don't know what the case may be. It's also making me wonder, like, what does that mean about the She-Hulk situation? Like, was that kind of like a, all right, I'm a suit up this one last time and then I'm back into retirement after his time in California with the whole She-Hulk situation? I'm curious, because also, you know, you're assuming this is obviously Kingpin after Hawkeye and Echo, because Echo ended leading into him running for mayor. It seems like by the time we get to him in this story, he already is mayor, but he still has those Kingpin moments of like, he tries. I think it's so interesting, and maybe that ended up being this dichotomy they kind of dive into, is Matt and Kingpin both presenting themselves as like, how much can you fight who you are a little bit of, like, no matter what Matt does, like the Daredevil is inside of him. That didn't come out of nowhere. That's always been inside of him. Maybe it's something he got from his dad, but it's there, and even though he tries to push it away, it bubbles to the surface because of stuff that happens throughout the show. And even though Kingpin tries to present himself a certain way, which even Matt's like, yeah, I feel like you're just kind of cutting corners and just kind of finding loopholes to try and hide what you really are doing, and the disguise are like, but he's like, yeah, everything I'm doing is for the sake of this city. And in his mind, he probably does believe, he's always believed that what he has done has been for the greater good. Some sacrifices had to be made along the way, but do a little evil for the greater good, because this is my city. I'm trying to protect it, save it, just as way as you. We just have two different views on how to do that. Once again, they're kind of two sides of the same coins. That's always been kind of their dichotomy. So we see Foggy and Karen. I'm curious to see how much they're going to be in the show, because it seemed like, and maybe there was someone else, it seemed like Matt's got another love interest, because I don't fully remember, because it's been a while. I haven't seen Daredevil season 3 since it originally dropped, so I'm like, I don't remember if him and Karen ever, I think they were still dating, but that's why I'm like, maybe something happens to Karen. And trailers know how to hit you. Hit me with that phrase, the devil's work is never done. I got chills. I was like, that's amazing. I was like, that's so dope. But the fact is, we get to see Muse, which I'm not that familiar with Muse. Once again, I've only know about him because of what other people said. You know, people who are more familiar with comics have said like, oh, he's like an artistic serial killer. The notion of who he is kind of obviously gives me a little Hannibal Lecter vibe, specifically like from the TV show Hannibal. I'm sure we're not going to go that brutal, but I'm curious to see what his whole like motif and angle is. Because, you know, it also reminds me of I can't remember his name, but he's the villain in season 3 of Jessica Jones. Kind of gives me some vibes of him meets, and this is going to be a wild pull. Are familiar with The Evil Within 2, the video game? You know, it's a video game series. If you've never, if you're not aware, there's one of the first big bads you face in that game is an artistic serial killer who like puts on displays and he takes photographs and stuff. It's something about it, like an artistic killer kind of like it amalgamates all that in my head, and I'm wondering like I said, what his motif was going to be. But we had that. I believe we have White Tiger. We definitely have Bullseye. I'm curious to see what role everyone has to play in this. This is like a 9-episode thing. It was originally going to be an 18-episode, but like I said, the show got reworked. So I'm curious, like, are we going to have like, I've never seen Andor, but this is the way people described it. Andor was like 3-episode arc, so like every 3 episodes was a whole arc. So I'm wondering if Daredevil Born Again is constructed like that. Like, okay, here's an arc, here's an arc, here's an arc. You know, you know, Agatha All Along and WandaVision weren't necessarily constructed like that. They were both 9 episodes, but I'm curious to see, like, are we going to have major villains for each arc? And then we also have Punisher returning. So I'm like, where is everybody? Like, I'd assume this is a Punisher post season 2 where he kind of really leaned into becoming the Punisher, but we see him with the full beard and everything. But I'm like, where are you at? Like, what happened? You know, how much stuff, once again, how much is going to be canonical to the MCU? How much is going to be kind of retconned and changed? I'm just curious to see what role everyone ends up playing and just ultimately where the story ends up going. I was already hyped for the show, but this trailer got me even more hyped. I'm so pumped for it. It felt good, and it's just like, once again, they know how to cut a trailer together to give you the most power and impact. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where this takes us, and like I said, like, just kind of where we're picking up with these characters, and like I said, how much of it is kind of being retconned of, like, not even just like Netflix Marvel stuff, but even MCU stuff. Like I said, whether it's She-Hulk or Hawkeye or Echo, like how much of that's kind of being retooled, not necessarily fully retconned, but retooled to fit the narrative better of what they're going with. Who knows? They might acknowledge that stuff. They'd be like, it happened, but we're not going to talk about it. We're just going to pretend like it didn't. Or they will lean into it, be like, well, that did happen. So I'm really curious to see how this whole storyline ends up playing out. But yeah, these are just kind of my general thoughts and feels. I'm really excited about what we saw. So obviously, I'd love to get to know your thoughts. What did you think? What do you want from this series? What do you expect from this series? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.